Man saves lion from cliff. What the lion does next is amazing. The McCaw Haven Wildlife Sanctuary was the pride of Clearwater, Florida, a natural gem where rescued animals found safety, treatment, and for many, a permanent home. But on that sunny October morning, the usual silence of the place was broken by desperate shouts from visitors pointing toward the big cat area. Michael Thompson, the keeper responsible for the big cats for nearly 2 decades, felt his heart race when he heard the alert. Rex, the lion he had raised since cubhood after being rescued from an illegal circus, was trapped on a steep cliff formed recently due to heavy rains that had battered the region. Without a second thought, Michael ran down the service path while hearing the angry voice of the sanctuary director, Richard Parker, over the radio, ordering him to follow protocol and wait for the rescue team. "Rex won't last, he's hurt," Michael shouted into the radio, completely ignoring the orders. He knew every behavior of that animal. In recent weeks, Rex had been slower due to inflammation in his hind paw, a result of years of mistreatment before the rescue. When he reached the outer area of the enclosure, Michael saw dozens of tourists gathered, some filming with their phones, others covering their eyes, unable to watch the drama unfolding. The lion, magnificent with his golden mane, was on a narrow ledge about 4 meters high, growling in fear and pain. Unable to climb up or down due to the slippery terrain and his injured paw, the animal's eyes met Michael's. 17 years of daily companionship. Without hesitation, the keeper jumped the safety fence. "Michael, don't do this," yelled Jennifer, one of the center's biologists, grabbing his arm. "Richard will fire you on the spot." "I'd rather lose my job than lose him," he replied, pulling free from his colleague's grip. Michael began climbing the cliff slowly, speaking softly to the animal. "Easy, big guy. I'm coming. You trust me, don't you?" The visitors held their breath. A deathly silence fell over the place, broken only by the sound of loose dirt falling as Michael climbed carefully. With each step, his calloused hands sought secure holds. "Stay still, buddy," he whispered as he got closer. The lion, against all wild instincts, seemed to understand staying motionless, only following Michael with his amber eyes. It was then that Mrs. Eleanor Wright, a 70-year-old woman visiting the sanctuary with her group of elderly friends, took a handkerchief from her purse and wiped the tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Look at the love between them," she remarked to Margaret, her longtime friend. "It reminds me so much of my Harold with that stray dog we adopted." Michael was now less than a meter from the lion. With gentle gestures and soothing words, he slowly extended his hand. The tourists watched, mesmerized at this unlikely scene, a man and a wild beast connected by something beyond ordinary understanding. "Come on, old friend. Let's get out of here together," Michael said, looking straight into the animal's eyes. What happened next left everyone speechless. Rex, instead of showing any sign of aggression, stretched out his massive paw toward the keeper, as if asking for help. The eye contact between them was so intense that many present later swore the lion had tears in his eyes. With extreme care, Michael reached the animal, and with a technique blending experience and pure instinct, began guiding him to a safer path. Inch by inch, man and beast descended the treacherous cliff together. When they finally reached the ground, a spontaneous round of applause erupted among the visitors. Some were openly crying. Mrs. Eleanor and her group of friends clapped with youthful enthusiasm. "That young man deserves a medal," exclaimed Mrs. Margaret, wiping away tears. Little did they know that instead of a medal, what awaited Michael was immediate suspension. Richard Parker, in his impeccable suit that contrasted sharply with the sanctuary's natural setting, was already striding toward the keeper, his face red with fury. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" the director hissed, trying to keep his voice low to avoid alarming the visitors further. "You violated every safety protocol. You could have died and even caused an accident with the visitors." Michael, still panting from the rescue effort, tried to explain. "Richard, he was going to fall. You know about his poor condition." "I don't care. You're suspended until further notice. Hand over your badge and leave the sanctuary immediately," Richard ordered, extending his hand. The murmurs among the visitors grew louder, The video of the heroic rescue, recorded on dozens of phones, was already circulating on social media, along with the scene of Michael's suspension, which was now unfolding in front of everyone. Mrs. Eleanor, watching closely, furrowed her brows. Something about the situation deeply unsettled her, stirring memories from decades ago when she was still practicing her profession. "All right, folks, the show's over," Richard announced to the visitors with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everyone will receive a special discount at the gift shop as thanks for your understanding." As the tourists were gently guided away from the scene, Michael cast one last glance at Rex, who was being led back to his enclosure by two other keepers. The lion turned, searching for Michael with his eyes, letting out a low roar that sounded more like a lament. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. By the next morning, the rescue video had already garnered millions of views. The headlines highlighted Michael's courage and his extraordinary bond with the lion. Commentators hotly debated the sanctuary administration's decision to suspend the moment's hero. Emily Parker, Richard's daughter, and a recent biology graduate from UCLA, watched everything with growing discomfort. At 26, she had returned to Clearwater just 2 weeks earlier to begin work at the sanctuary her father had managed for over a decade. She had ambitious plans to modernize the facilities and implement more efficient conservation programs. But something about her father's behavior regarding the incident troubled her. "Dad, don't you think you were too harsh on Michael?" she asked during breakfast on the spacious veranda of the house they shared, overlooking the dense vegetation of the Everglades. Richard looked up from his newspaper. "Emily, you're new to this business. Rules exist for a reason. If we let employees break them whenever they please, we'll have chaos soon enough." "But he saved the lion, an animal that, from what I understand, is invaluable to the sanctuary," she argued. "It's not about the outcome but the method," Richard retorted, visibly irritated. "Besides, we have a reputation to uphold. What if he'd been attacked in front of dozens of visitors? Think of the lawsuits, the bad publicity." Emily didn't respond, but something in her father's words rang false. Throughout her academic training, she'd learned that animal welfare should be at the heart of every sanctuary decision. Meanwhile, in the small apartment at the back of the sanctuary complex, Michael woke after a sleepless night. The tired face reflected in the bathroom mirror showed deep circles under his eyes and an expression of worry. It wasn't his job keeping him up. At 38, with his experience, he could find work at any other sanctuary or zoo. It was Rex. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Sarah, the sanctuary's head veterinarian and a close friend. "Mike, you need to know, Rex hasn't eaten since yesterday," she said, her voice low as if afraid of being overheard. "I've tried everything, even that seasoned meat only you know how to make. He won't even look at the food." Michael's heart clenched. It wasn't unusual for captive animals to form strong bonds with their caretakers, but Rex's case was special. Rescued from a circus at 2 months old, severely malnourished and with infected wounds, the cub had to be bottle-fed by Michael for months. The bond formed during that time went beyond the normal relationship between caretaker and animal. "I'm coming over," Michael decided. "Don't even think about it," Sarah warned. "Richard Parker has security at the entrance with strict orders to keep you out. He's furious with all the media attention." "Then what do you suggest? That I let Rex waste away?" There was a sigh on the other end of the line. "No, of course not. I'm trying to convince Richard to reconsider, but he won't budge. He says you compromised the sanctuary's safety and broke his trust." After hanging up, Michael stared out the window at the sanctuary that had been his second home for nearly 2 decades. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just his suspension. Over the last few months, he'd noticed subtle changes in management, cuts to the food budget, reductions in the veterinary staff, delays in urgent enclosure repairs. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. When he opened the door, Michael found himself face to face with Mrs. Eleanor Wright, the woman who had watched the rescue closely the day before. "Good morning, young man. May we talk?" she asked with an elegance that contrasted with the simplicity of the place. Intrigued, Michael invited her in. The small apartment was modest but clean and tidy, with several animal photographs on the walls, in many of them a lion cub growing with each picture until it became the majestic Rex. "Would you like some coffee, ma'am?" Eleanor Wright. "And yes, coffee would be lovely," she replied, sitting on the worn-out sofa. "But you can just call me Eleanor. I'm too old for formalities." As Michael prepared the coffee in the small kitchen, Eleanor studied the room carefully. Her sharp eyes noticed every detail: the books on animal behavior stacked on the table, the specialized course certificates hanging discreetly on one wall, the veterinary first aid kit always within reach. "You truly love what you do, don't you?" she remarked when Michael returned with 2 steaming cups. "It's more than just a job for me," he admitted, handing her the coffee. "Especially with Rex. He's like family." Eleanor nodded, taking a sip. "I understand perfectly. You know, young man, I didn't come here by chance. What I saw yesterday, that connection between you and the lion, reminded me of something I've spent my life studying." "Are you a zoologist?" Michael asked, curious. A mysterious smile played on her wrinkled lips. "A veterinarian, actually, specialized in big cats. Retired 15 years ago. But some passions never leave us, do they?" Michael's eyes widened. "Wait, Eleanor Wright? Dr. Eleanor Wright, who wrote Behavior and Rehabilitation of Big Cats? That book changed my life. It's why I decided to work with rescued animals." The older woman's cheeks flushed slightly at the recognition. "The very same, but I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here about the present. I'm worried about the lion. Rex, is it? I noticed he has a chronic inflammation in his hind paw." "Yes, a result of mistreatment at the circus. He improved a lot with treatment, but it will never fully heal," explained Michael, impressed by the precise observation. "And now they tell me he hasn't eaten since the incident," continued Eleanor. "How do you know that?" "I have my sources," she replied with a small smile. "But more importantly, I'm here to help. I didn't like what I saw yesterday, and I'm not referring to your act of bravery, but to the administration's reaction. Something doesn't smell right at that sanctuary, and it's not just the cages that need cleaning." Michael observed the woman with growing admiration. There was a fierce determination behind those gentle eyes, reminding him that age often brings not just wisdom, but also an unshakable courage that comes from having nothing left to lose. "What do you suggest?" he finally asked. Eleanor set her, cup down firmly. "First, we need to find out what's really happening at that sanctuary. And then, young man, we'll fix this situation. No animal will suffer while I still draw breath, especially not at the hands of bureaucracy and incompetence." In the administration office of Macaw Haven Wildlife Sanctuary, Richard Parker stared at his computer screen with increasing irritation. Protest emails kept pouring in, many from important donors questioning the decision to suspend the handler who had saved the lion. The door opened without a knock, and his daughter Emily entered, her face resolute. "Dad, we need to talk about Rex. He hasn't eaten anything since yesterday." Richard sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "We already have 3 veterinarians handling it. The animal will adjust." "It's not about adjustment. It's a clear case of emotional bonding. I studied this in college. Some animals—" "Don't come at me with academic theories, Emily," Richard interrupted, slamming his hand on the desk. "We're running a business here. I have a reputation to uphold and rules to maintain." Emily crossed her arms, giving him a look he knew well, the same stubbornness she'd inherited from him. "A business? I thought we ran a wildlife sanctuary, not an amusement park." A knock at the door interrupted the argument. It was Robert, the sanctuary's financial manager. "Mr. Parker, sorry to interrupt, but we just received a notification. There will be a surprise inspection from the Environmental Protection Agency tomorrow." Richard's face visibly paled. "What? The next inspection wasn't scheduled until next quarter." "Apparently there were several complaints after yesterday's incident," Robert explained nervously. "Something about inadequate enclosure conditions." "That's ridiculous," Richard shouted, standing abruptly. "This sanctuary is a model of excellence." Emily watched her father's exaggerated reaction with growing suspicion. Why was he so nervous about a simple inspection? "Dad, if everything's in order like you say, there's no reason to worry, right?" she asked. Richard shot her an irritated, "Look, of course not. But these inspections are unnecessary and disrupt normal operations. Robert, gather the team. I want everything spotless for tomorrow. And increase the animals' feed today. I want them all looking healthy. As Robert left, Emily approached her father's desk. Increase their feed today? Shouldn't the animals be getting proper nutrition every day? Don't be naive, Emily. It's just a measure to ensure they look presentable for the inspection. Basic politics. Politics or neglect, she countered, heading for the door. Before leaving, she turned back. I'll check on Rex myself. That lion doesn't deserve to suffer because of your politics. Meanwhile, at a cafe in downtown Clearwater, Michael and Eleanor spoke in hushed tones, making plans. The table between them was covered in papers, old sanctuary reports, news clippings, and a few photographs. This doesn't make sense, remarked Michael, examining a financial report Sarah had secretly obtained for him. The sanctuary received a significant donation last year to modernize the enclosures, but the work never started. Eleanor adjusted her glasses, scanning the numbers. And look at this. The budget for food and veterinary care was cut by 30%, while administrative expenses increased significantly. The problem is, we can't prove any wrongdoing without access to the full records, Michael sighed. Maybe we don't need to prove everything right now, Eleanor mused, a shrewd glint in her eyes. Sometimes we just need to apply enough pressure for the cracks to start showing. You said your friend Sarah mentioned an inspection tomorrow, right? Michael nodded, intrigued by the direction of the conversation. Well, what if we made sure that inspection was thorough? I still have some old contacts at the Environmental Protection Agency. The handler looked at the older woman with renewed admiration. You're not your average retiree, are you? Eleanor laughed, a surprisingly youthful sound. Dear, no one who's dedicated their life to wildlife can ever be considered average. Now, we have another urgent matter. Rex. If he doesn't start eating soon, he could develop serious liver problems in just a few days. Sarah's trying everything, but he refuses any food that doesn't come from me, Michael explained, concern evident in his voice. Then perhaps it's time for a nighttime. A visit to the sanctuary, Eleanor suggested with unsettling calm. You're suggesting I break into the sanctuary? Michael asked, lowering his voice even further. Break in is such a strong word. I prefer to think you'd be fulfilling your moral duty to care for an animal in distress, she replied efficiently, gathering the papers into her bag. Besides, I have something to confess. I didn't come to the sanctuary yesterday by chance. Michael leaned in, curious. That land, where the sanctuary is built, it belongs to me, Eleanor revealed with a small smile. I leased it to the Foundation 15 years ago, on the express condition that it be used solely for conservation and animal welfare, under competent and ethical management. Michael's eyes widened at the revelation. So you're the legal owner? Yes, and Richard Parker knows it very well, though he makes sure to hide that detail from everyone. The lease agreement has several clauses that I suspect are being blatantly violated. As dusk fell, Emily paced restlessly through the nearly empty sanctuary. The last staff members were leaving, and only the night guards would remain. Her mind buzzed with unanswered questions. Since returning from her studies in Miami 2 weeks ago, she'd noticed strange behavior from her father, secret meetings, documents hastily hidden when she entered his office, excessive nervousness about finances. Approaching Rex's enclosure, she found Sarah, the veterinarian, still trying to get the lion to eat. Any progress? Emily asked, stepping closer to the bars. Sarah shook her head, discouraged. Nothing. I've tried every trick I learned from Michael. Rex won't even look at the meat. Emily watched the magnificent animal lying in the farthest corner of the enclosure, his eyes fixed on the entrance, as if waiting for someone. There was an almost human sadness in that gaze. I've never seen anything like this before, Emily said, both fascinated and worried. In college, we studied bonds between humans and captive animals, but this is something else. Sarah smiled sadly. Michael and Rex have a special history. When they brought the cub in, the vets didn't give him a month to live. He was covered in parasites, malnourished, with infected wounds. Michael slept by the cage for weeks, feeding him every 3 hours. You weren't here back then. No, my father took over when I was 16 and away at boarding school, Emily recalled. What Michael did was a miracle, Sarah continued. He researched, consulted experts, developed a special diet, sleepless nights, total dedication. And when Rex finally started improving, the bond was already formed. It's like they could communicate without words. Emily felt a lump in her throat. Why couldn't her father see the value in this? Why was he so obsessed with rules that he forgot the sanctuary's greater purpose? I'll talk to my father again, she decided. This can't go on. Rex's well-being must come first. Sarah glanced around, checking if they were alone, and lowered her voice. Emily, there might be more to this story. Over the last few months, I've noticed troubling changes. Budget cuts, delayed treatments, staff reductions. I've sensed something off since I returned, Emily admitted. I caught my father hiding documents when I walked into his office, unannounced the other day. There's more, Sarah whispered, even quieter. That new area being built next to the sanctuary? Officially, it's an expansion, but I've overheard talk about a luxury resort. A resort? That would completely violate the sanctuary's mission, Emily gasped. Exactly. And much of the donation money seems to be funding that project, not the animals. Emily's stomach dropped. Could her father really be diverting funds meant for the animals? The thought was too painful to consider. I need proof before confronting him, she resolved. Do you have access to the admin office? No, but I know who does, Sarah replied, a faint smile forming. And by coincidence, he's probably planning a nighttime visit to the sanctuary right now. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. Night fell over Macaw Haven, bringing silence broken only by the occasional sounds of animals. Moving. With silent precision, Michael navigated the shadows, knowing the grounds like the back of his hand after years of working there. There were 3 night guards, but Michael knew their routines. Between Joe's patrol in the north and Anthony's inevitable 11:15 p.m. coffee break, there was a 7-minute window when the path to the big cat's enclosure was unguarded. I hope Eleanor is right, he murmured, carrying a backpack with meat specially prepared for Rex and some medications Sarah had set aside. As he skirted the admin building, Michael froze at the sound of voices. Hiding behind bushes, he spotted 2 figures leaving, one instantly recognizable, Richard Parker. The other, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit, was unfamiliar. Everything's set for Phase 1, the stranger said. Once we have the permits, we'll start the resort's main construction. The investors are eager. What about tomorrow's inspection? Richard asked, visibly tense. We've spoken to the right people, the man assured. It'll be quick, just formalities, as long as you keep that troublesome handler away. Michael won't be back anytime soon, Richard said firmly. I'm preparing paperwork to fire him for cause, insubordination, safety protocol violations. Perfect. The last thing we need is an emotional employee meddling in business matters. Michael felt his blood boil but remained still. So his suspicions were correct. Something shady was happening at the sanctuary. He waited for the 2 men to walk away before continuing on his path, now with renewed determination. When he reached Rex's enclosure, his heart clenched. The mighty lion, who always greeted him with enthusiasm, lay in a corner, visibly weakened. As he opened the caretaker's gate, Michael made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. A familiar call. He'd used since Rex was a cub. The lion's ears twitched instantly. His head lifted, amber eyes locking onto the darkness. A low growl, almost a whimper of recognition, escaped his throat. Hey, big guy, Michael whispered, stepping closer. I missed you. What happened next brought tears to the caretaker's eyes. Rex, the imposing 400-pound lion, struggled to his feet and came to him like an eager cub, rubbing his massive head against Michael's body in a gesture of affection and relief. We need to take care of you, Michael said, stroking the golden mane as he opened his backpack. Sarah told me you've been on a hunger strike, you stubborn thing. With patience and care, he managed to get Rex to eat the prepared meat and accept the hidden medication. That's it, champ. You need to stay strong. It's truly extraordinary. The female voice startled Michael, who turned quickly. Standing a few feet away was Emily, watching the scene with wonder in her eyes. Emily, I can explain, Michael began, tense. You don't have to, she interrupted, stepping closer cautiously. Sarah told me everything. I'm here to help." As Rex continued eating, now with renewed appetite, Michael studied the director's daughter warily. "Help how? Your father made it very clear he wants me gone." "My father hasn't been himself lately," Emily replied, sadness evident in her voice. "I've heard things about misused funds, about a resort being built with money, meant for the animals." Michael hesitated, still unsure if he could trust her. "I need proof, Michael," she continued, her eyes pleading. "If my father's involved in something illegal, I want to know. This sanctuary, these animals, they mean everything to me. I can't just stand by and watch it all be destroyed." The sincerity in her voice convinced him. "I've heard about the resort too. And there's more. His medication's been cut back," he said, stroking Rex's head. "The food rations too. Animals needing surgeries have had their procedures postponed indefinitely. My father's office must have documents," Emily suggested. "If we can get access..." "It's risky," Michael cautioned. "If we're caught..." "I have access," Emily stated firmly. "I'm his daughter, after all, and after hours I know where the spare key is." A plan began forming between them, interrupted only by the sound of approaching footsteps, the security patrol. "I have to go," Michael whispered, giving Rex one last pat. "I'll be back tomorrow, champ, promise." "I'll distract the guard," Emily offered. "Go out the back." Before leaving, Michael met the young woman's gaze. "Why are you doing this? You're going against your own father." "Because some things are more important than blood ties," she replied firmly. "The truth is, one of them." The next morning, the sanctuary staff worked frantically to prepare for inspection. Richard moved from one enclosure to another, barking orders and checking every detail. "More food for the primates. I want all water troughs cleaned. Replace that faded sign immediately," he commanded, sweat dripping down his face despite the mild day. Robert, the financial manager, shadowed him nervously. "Mr. Parker, we have a problem with the meat supplier. They won't deliver until they receive the overdue payment." "Pay whatever is necessary," Richard snapped through gritted teeth. "Use the reserve fund if you have to." "But, sir, the reserve fund is nearly depleted from the payments to the construction company." "Don't mention that here," Richard cut him off, glancing around nervously. "Just handle it, Robert. The inspectors arrive in 2 hours and I want everything perfect." Emily watched the scene from a distance, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. The night before, after helping Michael escape, she had used the spare key to enter her father's office. What she found in the files confirmed her worst suspicions. Documents detailing misused funds, contracts with a construction company for a project called Everglades Luxury Eco Resort, and approvals obtained through questionable channels. With a heavy heart, she had photographed everything and sent it to Michael, who then shared it with Eleanor. The seasoned woman was now rallying her contacts to ensure the inspection wouldn't be just a formality. "Emily, don't just stand there," Richard called, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Make sure all the veterinary reports are organized in my office." "Of course, Dad," she replied automatically, heading toward the administrative building. Inside the office, Emily found Sarah sorting through files. "Did you get the documents?" the veterinarian whispered. "Yes. They're even worse than we imagined," Emily confirmed. "Eleanor is meeting with the inspectors right now, making sure this visit is thorough. Your father will find out you're involved," Sarah warned, concerned. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision. "I know, but I can't be part of this. These animals trust us. They depend on us." A commotion outside caught their attention. Through the window, they saw 3 official cars pulling into the parking lot. The inspection team had arrived. To everyone's surprise, Eleanor Wright stepped out of one of the vehicles. Richard, who had rushed to greet the inspectors, froze at the sight of her. "Dr. Wright, what are you doing here?" Eleanor smiled politely, though her eyes remained cold. "Good morning, Richard. After all these years of managing my property, I thought you'd be happy to see me taking part in the inspection." The color drained from Richard's face. "But there was no need to trouble yourself. Oh, it's no trouble at all," Eleanor interrupted as the inspectors began dispersing across the grounds. "In fact, I'm eager to see how you've managed the sanctuary all these years, especially considering the specific conditions of our leasing agreement." The inspectors worked methodically, checking every enclosure, every document, every procedure. Richard shadowed them like a ghost, trying to contain the damage, but it was clear to everyone that something was very wrong. When they reached Rex's enclosure, they found the lion far more alert than the day before. The animal paced back and forth, occasionally looking beyond the bars as if searching for someone. "Is this the famous lion from the video?" one inspector asked. "The one saved by the handler you suspended?" "An unfortunate incident," Richard tried to explain. "The employee violated critical safety protocols and saved a valuable animal that was in danger due to inadequate enclosure maintenance," Eleanor finished. "A danger that, I might add, wouldn't exist if the structural reinforcements, paid for by donations specifically earmarked for that purpose, had been completed as they should have been." The lead inspector, a stern-faced man with a clipboard always at the ready, raised an eyebrow. "Earmarked donations? Could you elaborate, Dr. Wright?" "Wright?" "With pleasure," replied Eleanor, pulling a folder of documents from her bag. "I have here copies of all substantial donations made to the sanctuary over the past 5 years, along with their specific allocations. I also have detailed reports showing where the money was actually spent." Richard paled even further. "How did you get these documents?" "Oh, that doesn't matter now, does it?" Eleanor countered with an innocent smile. The chief inspector flipped through the documents with growing concern. "Mr. Parker, this is extremely serious. There appear to be significant discrepancies between the funds received and the investments in the sanctuary. And that doesn't even touch on the Everglades luxury project," Eleanor added, producing more documents. A luxury resort being built with money meant for animal welfare in an area that, according to our contract, should be used exclusively for conservation. The inspection continued for hours, each discovery heightening the tension. Staff watched from a distance, murmuring among themselves. Emily stayed away from her father, unable to look at him, while Sarah discreetly documented everything. By the end of the day, the inspectors gathered to deliberate, leaving Richard in his office, awaiting the verdict with Robert and 2 lawyers he had hastily called. Eleanor found Emily sitting on a bench away from the others, staring at Rex's enclosure. "It was you, wasn't it?" the older woman asked gently, sitting beside her. "The one who gave access to the documents?" Emily nodded, tears finally escaping. "My own father, how could he do this? Misuse money meant for the animals, lie, manipulate. Power and greed do terrible things to people," Eleanor replied, placing a wrinkled hand over the young woman's. "But what matters is that you chose the right path, even though it was the hardest." "What happens now?" Emily asked, wiping her tears. "Well, your father will certainly face legal consequences. As for the sanctuary," Eleanor paused, looking around fondly, "it will need new management, someone who truly cares about the animals." At that moment, Rex let out a low growl. Both women turned to the lion, whose ears were perked up, staring intently at a point beyond them. Following his gaze, they saw Michael walking toward the sanctuary, accompanied by the inspectors. "Seems they want to speak with the real expert," Eleanor remarked with a smile. Night fell over McCaw Haven, bringing deep changes with it. After hours of deliberation, the inspectors had issued a devastating preliminary report. Serious administrative irregularities, misallocation of funds, negligence in animal care, violations of multiple environmental regulations. Richard Parker had been temporarily removed from sanctuary management, pending further investigation. Robert and 2 other administrators were also under scrutiny. Construction of the resort was halted immediately. In the small apartment at the back of the sanctuary, Michael received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang just after 8 in the evening, and when he opened the door, he found Richard Parker. "May I come in?" the former director asked, his face haggard, a far cry from his former authoritative demeanor. Surprised, Michael stepped aside, letting him in. An uncomfortable silence hung between them as Richard surveyed the modest apartment, pausing at the photographs of Rex. "You really love that lion, don't you?" he finally remarked. "Like he's my own son," Michael answered honestly. Richard nodded, sinking heavily onto the couch. "I've come to make you a proposal, Michael." "What kind of proposal?" the keeper asked warily. "I know you and my daughter are behind this," Richard stated bluntly. "The documents, Mrs. Eleanor Wright, the rigorous inspection, it was all orchestrated." Michael Thompson remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. "But I also know you're an exceptional professional," continued Richard Parker. "Here's my proposal. You return to work tomorrow with a significant raise. I'll appoint you as supervisor of all the big cats. In exchange, you talk to Eleanor, convince her to reconsider. Say there was a misunderstanding, that the documents were misinterpreted." "You're asking me to lie?" asked Michael, incredulous. "I'm asking you to be pragmatic," corrected Richard. "Think of the animals. If I'm permanently removed, who guarantees the next administrator will be better? At least you know me, how I work." Michael studied the man before him, noticing the desperation in his eyes for the first time. "And the resort? The misused funds?" "Details that can be negotiated," Richard replied with a dismissive wave. "I can ensure more funds go to the animals, more staff hired. It's a win-win." For a moment, Michael considered the offer. His work was his life, and the idea of returning, of being with Rex every day again, was tempting. But then he remembered everything he'd uncovered: the rationed medication, the deteriorating enclosures, the postponed treatments. "No," he finally said firmly. "This isn't about me or my job. It's about the animals, about doing what's right." Richard's face hardened. "You'll regret this, Michael. I have connections. I can make sure you never work with animals anywhere in the United States again." "You can try," Michael replied calmly. "But I think your influence isn't what it was a few hours ago." After Richard left, Michael had another visitor. Emily, Sarah, and Eleanor arrived together, determination on their faces. "My father was here," Emily remarked after being invited in. "He tried to bribe you, didn't he?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "He offered me my job back with a promotion if I helped cover this up." "Typical," Emily sighed, sadness in her voice. "He tried the same with me, said it was a family matter, that we should protect each other." "And what did you say?" Michael asked. "That my loyalty is to the animals and the truth, not to corrupt schemes, even if they come from my own father," she replied firmly. Eleanor smiled proudly at the young woman before addressing everyone. "I have news. The inspection committee recommended appointing an interim administration while the investigation continues, and they asked me to suggest names." The three looked at her expectantly. "I've been thinking of a shared leadership," she continued. "Someone with hands-on experience with the animals, someone with veterinary knowledge, and someone with up-to-date academic training." Sarah was the first to understand. "You mean the three of us? Me, Michael, and Emily?" "Exactly," Eleanor confirmed. "With my supervision, of course. What do you think?" A brief silence filled the small apartment as each processed the idea. It was a huge responsibility, an immense challenge. "I accept," Michael declared, breaking the silence first, "for Rex and all the other animals who depend on us." "Me too," Sarah agreed. "It's long past time this sanctuary truly fulfilled its mission." All eyes turned to Emily, who seemed conflicted. "I don't know if I have enough experience," she admitted, "and what will people say when they find out I helped expose my own father?" "They'll say you have integrity," Eleanor replied with conviction. "And as for experience, that's why it's shared leadership. You'll learn from each other." After a moment of thought, Emily nodded. "I'm in." The following dawn, as the full moon bathed the Everglades in its silvery light, a shadow moved silently along the sanctuary paths. It was Michael, making his rounds to check on the animals after such a turbulent day. When he reached Rex's enclosure, he found the lion awake, as if waiting for him. The animal approached the bars, emitting a soft sound of recognition. "Hey, big guy," whispered Michael, inserting the key into the gate. "Just checking in on you." Once inside, Michael sat on the enclosure floor and Rex lay beside him, his massive head resting on Michael's legs like a house cat seeking affection. The keeper's calloused hands stroked the golden mane as he quietly shared plans for the future. "We're going to make this the best sanctuary in the United States, buddy. You'll get a renovated enclosure, more space, a natural pool. And that inflammation of yours, we'll bring in specialists to treat it properly." Rex purred softly, his amber eyes half closed in contentment. "It's a new era for all of us, pal," Michael continued. "And it all started because you got yourself stuck on that cliff. Who would have thought, huh?" At sunrise, staff and a few early visitors witnessed an unusual sight. Michael peacefully asleep inside the enclosure, using Rex's body as a pillow, the mighty lion guarding his rest like a silent sentinel. In the weeks that followed, McCaw Haven began its transformation. With the new shared leadership, changes were visible every day. Renovated enclosures, improved diets, an expanded veterinary team, and revamped educational programs. The video of Rex's rescue, already viral, gained new traction when the full story came to light. Journalists from across the country sought interviews with the new administrators, especially Michael and his extraordinary bond with the lion. One sunny morning, Laura Smith, a renowned host of an environmental documentary series, arrived at the sanctuary with her crew. She had requested an exclusive interview, promising national exposure for the sanctuary's rehabilitation efforts. "We're live from McCaw Haven, where an incredible story of corruption, redemption, and above all an extraordinary bond between man and beast has been unfolding," Laura announced to the camera as she walked through the sanctuary with Michael. "Michael, tell our viewers what the animals' conditions were like before this transformation," she asked. Michael, still uneasy with media attention, answered honestly. "The animals survived, but they weren't truly living. Resources were rationed, treatments delayed, spaces inadequate. We did our best on the front lines, but without proper administrative support." "And now," Laura prompted, "now every decision is made with the animals' well-being first," he replied with a genuine smile. "Funding goes where it's needed most. We have partnerships with universities for research and advanced treatments. The team is motivated." "What about Rex, the lion you rescued from the cliff?" Laura asked as they approached the renovated enclosure. Michael's smile widened. "Rex is doing great. His chronic paw inflammation is responding well to the new treatment. He's more active, happier." When they reached the enclosure, Rex immediately approached, focusing entirely on Michael. The film crew, though accustomed to documenting animal behavior, was visibly struck by the undeniable connection between man and beast. "Can I ask something personal?" Laura requested, as the camera captured Rex responding to Michael's subtle commands. "How did you feel when you were suspended for saving this animal?" The question caught Michael by surprise. He paused for a moment before answering. "I felt angry at first, then afraid, not for myself but for Rex and the other animals. That fear is what drove me to act, to uncover the truth about what was happening here." "And what about the former director, Richard Parker?" Laura continued. "He now faces multiple charges of embezzlement and negligence. What are your thoughts on that?" "I'd rather focus on the present and the future," Michael replied diplomatically. "The past is being handled by the proper authorities. Our mission now is to ensure this sanctuary fulfills its original purpose, to be a safe refuge for animals in need of protection." Just then, Rex let out a low growl as if wanting to join the conversation. Laura instinctively stepped back, but Michael smiled. "He's just agreeing with me," he explained, drawing laughter from the crew. "Could we film you interacting with him up close?" Laura asked. "It would be a powerful way to raise awareness about conservation work." Michael glanced at Emily and Sarah, who had been watching the interview from a distance. Both nodded encouragingly. "Of course, as long as we respect his space," Michael agreed, opening the safety gate and stepping inside. What followed was a natural, unscripted display of the bond between Michael and Rex. No tricks, no elaborate commands, just years of mutual trust. The lion allowed touches he would never tolerate from others, responded to nearly imperceptible whispers, and maintained steady eye contact with his caretaker. "This is absolutely extraordinary," Laura remarked, genuinely moved. "In all my years documenting wildlife, I've never seen anything like it." The live broadcast was breaking viewership records, with audiences across the country captivated by this rare display of interspecies trust. The peaceful atmosphere was suddenly shattered when a man came shouting toward the enclosure. It was Richard Parker, visibly agitated. "It's all lies! You're destroying my reputation!" he yelled, dangerously close to breaching the safety barrier. Sanctuary security rushed toward him, But they weren't fast enough. Richard had already bypassed the first barrier and was nearing the interview area. "You!" he pointed at Michael inside the enclosure. "You set this all up, you and my ungrateful daughter." The commotion sent immediate tension through the crowd. Visitors backed away in alarm, the film crew went on high alert, and Laura, the host, froze momentarily, unsure how to react to the sudden intrusion. Inside the enclosure, Michael noticed Rex tensing beside him. Years of experience told him the lion was reacting to the perceived threat, Richard's aggressive tone, the sudden chaos around them. "Easy, Rex," Michael whispered, keeping a steady hand on the animal's back. "It's okay." Richard kept advancing, ignoring the pleas of security and even his own daughter, who now tried to stop him. "Dad, stop, you're not thinking clearly," Emily begged, grabbing his arm. "Let go of me, I'll expose this fraud," Richard shouted, shaking her off with a sharp motion that sent her stumbling to the ground. Then something extraordinary happened. Rex, having watched the entire scene, swiftly moved to the front of the enclosure, positioning himself between Michael and Richard, who was now dangerously close to the bars. But instead of the threatening roar everyone feared, the lion stood in a protective stance, body alert, gaze fixed, yet showing no outright aggression. It was as if he had placed himself as a barrier, shielding Michael from the perceived threat. The gesture seemed to freeze time itself. Richard Parker, confronted by the steady gaze of the powerful predator, instinctively stepped back. "My God!" exclaimed Laura as the cameras captured everything live. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing something truly extraordinary here. The lion is literally protecting his handler." The scene, broadcast live to millions of viewers, was one of primitive and moving beauty. The lion showed no aggression, only protective determination. His amber eyes shifted between Richard Parker and Michael Thompson, as if constantly assessing the situation. Richard Parker, disarmed by the animal's reaction, let his arms fall to his sides, all his previous aggression deflating like a punctured balloon. This is a trick," he muttered, but his voice no longer carried the same conviction. "It's no trick, Dad," said Emily, stepping closer again, now calmer. "This is exactly what we've been trying to show you for years. These animals aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet or attractions for tourists. They are sentient beings, capable of deep bonds and loyalty." The security team finally reached Richard Parker, escorting him out of the area with firm gentleness. The sanctuary's medical staff was called to check on him, suspecting a nervous breakdown. Inside the enclosure, Michael stroked Rex's mane, murmuring words of gratitude. The lion, sensing the threat had passed, gradually relaxed, but remained by his human protector's side. "I've never seen anything like it," commented Laura, still visibly emotional. "What we just witnessed goes beyond any documented behavior between a large predator and a human. It wasn't aggression, it was conscious protection." Michael smiled, looking affectionately at Rex. He knows who truly cares. These animals always do. The live broadcast instantly went viral. Clips of the moment Rex positioned himself protectively spread globally, sparking debates among animal behavior experts and drawing international attention to the sanctuary and its new administration. In the following days, McCaw Haven saw an unprecedented influx of visitors, all hoping to witness the extraordinary bond between Michael and Rex. Donations began pouring in from across the country, this time with guarantees of transparency and regular accountability. Mrs. Eleanor Wright, seated in the new administration office with Michael, Emily, and Sarah, smiled contentedly as they watched news reports about the sanctuary on major networks. "Who would have thought a risky rescue would lead to all this?" remarked the veteran, her eyes shining with pride. "You three achieved in weeks what I've dreamed of for decades." "We couldn't have done it without your guidance, Mrs. Wright," Sarah replied sincerely. "Or without your trust in us," added Emily, who was still grappling with the emotional conflict of having reported her own father, but found comfort in knowing she'd done the right thing. "By the way," continued Mrs. Wright, adjusting her glasses to read a document on her desk, "I received a letter this morning from Alexander Martin, that renowned big cat behavior specialist from the University of California. He's fascinated by the bond between Michael and Rex and wants to come study them." Michael, always uncomfortable with attention, shifted uneasily in his chair. "I don't want Rex treated as a curiosity or an experiment." "And he won't be," Mrs. Wright assured. "Alexander is an old friend, an ethical scientist. He wants to observe, learn, document, so others can better understand how to build respectful relationships with animals in sanctuaries." "I think it would be wonderful," Emily said. "Imagine the impact this could have on how sanctuaries and zoos operate in the future." After some consideration, Michael agreed. "If it's just non-invasive observation, and if Rex seems comfortable, I don't see a problem." As they discussed the details, an employee knocked on the door bringing another stack of mail, mostly donation offers, internship requests, and applications for technical visits. Macaw Haven was quickly becoming a benchmark for animal conservation and welfare. "We have another matter to discuss," Mrs. Eleanor Wright said after the employee left. "I got a call from the TV network director. They want to make a documentary series about the sanctuary, focusing especially on animal rehabilitation, and of course the bond between Michael Thompson and Rex." "An entire series?" Michael asked, surprised. 10 episodes initially with the possibility of renewal, Mrs. Wright confirmed. "They're offering a contract that would include a substantial donation to the sanctuary." Emily Parker and Sarah exchanged excited glances. The visibility would be huge, as would the resources they could generate to further improve the animals' conditions. "We don't need to decide right now," Mrs. Wright added, noticing Michael's hesitation. "But think about it. It wouldn't just be about you and Rex. It'd be about showing the world how wild animals should be respected and treated properly." That night, after work, Michael visited Rex as usual. Sitting beside the powerful lion, he shared the news as he always did. "We're getting famous, buddy," he remarked, scratching behind the feline's ears. "Experts, documentaries, everyone wants to meet you." Rex purred contentedly, his eyes half closed in pleasure at the familiar affection. "What do you think? Can you handle some scientists observing you? A few cameras?" Michael chuckled softly. "I think so. You've always been a show-off." The lion responded by rubbing his head against the keeper's shoulder, a gesture of affection that always moved Michael even after so many years. "You know, when I rescued you from that cliff, I never imagined we'd be here," he continued, thoughtful. "You've always been special, but now the whole world is seeing it." As man and beast shared that quiet moment under the starry Everglades sky, Mrs. Wright watched discreetly from a distance. Her experienced eyes, which had seen so many animals over decades in the field, recognized something truly unique, a connection that transcended species, built on absolute trust and mutual respect. With a satisfied smile, the veteran quietly walked away, leaving the two in their private bubble of understanding. The sanctuary's future seemed brighter than ever, all thanks to an act of courage and an extraordinary bond that reminded the world that sometimes the deepest connections arise in the most unlikely places. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The following months brought significant changes to Macaw Haven. The EE documentary series titled Wild Bonds became a national hit, drawing attention to conservation and animal rescue causes. The sanctuary, now a model of ethical management, welcomed visitors from across the country and even abroad. With new funding and partnerships, the enclosures were completely renovated, prioritizing the well-being and specific needs of each species. An expanded team of veterinarians and biologists ensured top-tier care, and innovative educational programs taught visitors about the importance of conservation. On a sunny August morning, Michael oversaw the installation of a new structure in Rex's enclosure, an elevated platform that would allow the lion to observe more of the surrounding landscape, enriching his environment. "Be careful with those bolts," he instructed the workers. "They need to be securely fastened to hold his weight." "Michael," Sarah called, hurrying toward him, "I need you to come see something." By the veterinarian's expression, it didn't seem serious, but there was an urgency in her voice that piqued Michael's curiosity. "Something wrong?" he asked, following her. "Not exactly wrong," she replied mysteriously. You'll understand when you see. Sarah led him to the administrative building, where they found Emily and Mrs. Eleanor Wright, gathered with a group of about 15 seniors, all wearing Sanctuary logo t-shirts. "Ah, finally!" Mrs. Wright exclaimed when she saw Michael. "Come, meet our new volunteers." Michael looked at the group curiously. The seniors, men and women who appeared to be between 65 and 80, watched him with eager smiles. "Volunteers?" he asked, confused. "Yes," Emily confirmed enthusiastically. "This is the first group from our new program, Natural Wisdom. Senior, volunteers who'll bring their life experience to help the sanctuary." Mrs. Wright stepped forward, standing beside the group. "Many of them have relevant backgrounds. We have former biology teachers, a retired agronomist, a nurse, even a former circus animal trainer who's now an animal rights activist." A silver-haired woman with elegant posture stepped forward. "I'm Dorothy, a former science teacher. I spent 40 years teaching about US ecosystems. Now, instead of just talking about conservation, I want to help directly." "And I'm Gerald," introduced a sun-weathered man. "I worked with cattle my whole life. I can tell when an animal isn't well just by the way it moves or eats." One by one, the seniors introduced themselves, each bringing unique stories and skills. Michael listened attentively, growing increasingly impressed by the group's potential. "The idea," Emily explained, "is for them to assist in various sanctuary activities, from educational outreach to behavioral observation of the animals. Many of them have free time and energy to contribute, plus wisdom only experience can bring." "It was inspired by what we saw with you and Mrs. Wright," Sarah added. "We realized how crucial her experience was in saving the sanctuary. We figured there must be many other seniors with valuable knowledge who could contribute here." Michael smiled, genuinely moved by the initiative. "It's a brilliant idea." "And there's more," Mrs. Wright continued, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Many of them have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We're planning an intergenerational program where young people can learn from their elders about conservation and respect for nature." The impact of the Natural Wisdom program exceeded expectations. The senior volunteers brought not just technical knowledge but a dedication and patience rarely seen. Visitors noticed how the elders spoke about the animals with near reverent respect, conveying not just facts but deep values about the relationship between humans and nature. Dorothy, the former teacher, developed brilliant educational materials that turned complex conservation concepts into accessible explanations. Gerald, the former rancher, had a sharp eye for spotting subtle changes in animal behavior, alerting the team early to potential health issues. One particularly busy Sunday, Michael was overseeing the big cat area when he noticed an unusual crowd near Rex's enclosure. Approaching, he saw old Sam, a 78-year-old former carpenter, telling a story to a group of captivated children. "And that's how I learned that every living being deserves respect," the elderly man concluded, gesturing toward Rex, who watched with apparent interest. "This lion here is no different from you and me. He wants safety, comfort, affection. The difference is he can't speak to say what he feels, so we have to observe and learn his language." The children listened, fascinated, asking questions that old Sam answered with the patience of someone who's lived long enough to never be in a hurry. "How do you know all this?" asked a boy of about 6. "Ah, young man, when you've lived as long as I have, you learn to observe. And the more you observe, the more you see how much all living beings have in common," the old man replied with a gentle smile. The scene moved Michael deeply. Knowledge being passed down like this, generation to generation, was exactly what the world needed. A reconnection with the traditional wisdom of respecting nature, combined with modern conservation science. The program gained national attention, inspiring other sanctuaries and zoos to implement similar initiatives. The idea of valuing elders' knowledge in conservation projects was innovative, yet rooted in ancient traditions of respecting the old. One October morning, about 6 months after the sanctuary's transformation, Michael was doing maintenance on one of the platforms in Rex's enclosure. It was routine work, checking stability, replacing a few worn boards, making sure everything was safe for the powerful big cat. Focused on the task, Michael didn't notice when the tool he was using slipped, cutting his hand. It wasn't serious, but it bled enough to be concerning. Trying to stop the bleeding with a piece of cloth, he slipped off the platform, falling from a height of about 6 feet. The fall wasn't dangerous, but the impact left him momentarily winded, lying on the cell enclosure floor. Before he could fully recover, he sensed a presence beside him. Rex had approached and was watching him closely, especially focused on the injured hand. "I'm okay, buddy," Michael murmured, still catching his breath. "Just a scratch." What happened next surprised even the experienced handler. The lion let out a low roar, not directed at Michael, but seemingly calling for attention. The sound, more controlled than his usual roars, echoed through the sanctuary. In the administrative area, Sarah was the first to notice something unusual. "Did you hear that? That's not Rex's normal roar." Emily, who was reviewing documents, looked up. "It sounds different." "It's an alert," said Dorothy, who was helping with educational records. "So I worked in Africa for 2 years in my youth. I know that sound. It's a call for help, not aggression." The three women exchanged worried glances and immediately headed to the big cat's enclosure. When they arrived, they found Rex standing protectively beside Michael, who was still on the ground, continuing to emit those controlled roars. "My God, Michael!" Sarah exclaimed, rushing to the enclosure entrance. "I'm fine," he assured her, finally managing to sit up. "Just took a little fall. It's just a cut on my hand, nothing serious." Rex stayed by the handler's side, occasionally, sniffing the wound with obvious concern but no aggression. He remained like that, watchful, until the medical team arrived and Michael was properly treated. "He called for help," Dorothy remarked, amazed. "He consciously changed his roar to alert, not to frighten. That's extraordinary." By the next day, the episode was known by everyone at the sanctuary. Alexander Martin, the animal behavior specialist studying the bond between Michael and Rex, was particularly impressed. "In 20 years studying big cats, I've never documented behavior like this," he remarked, while reviewing the security footage that had captured the incident. The conscious modulation of the roar for interspecies communication, the protective stance without any territorial aggression. It's a unique case. "What makes this so special?" asked Emily, genuinely curious. "Lions are territorial predators by nature," explained Alexander. "Under normal circumstances, a wounded and vulnerable human in a lion's territory would be seen as easy prey or at the very least ignored. But Rex not only recognized that Michael was injured, he took on a protective stance and actively sought help. "Like a rescue dog," commented Mrs. Eleanor Wright. "Exactly, but in an animal that hasn't been genetically selected over thousands of years for cooperation with humans like dogs have," confirmed Alexander. "It's an exceptional case of behavioral adaptation and interspecies emotional bonding." The news of Rex's extraordinary behavior quickly spread beyond the sanctuary's borders. Animal behavior experts from universities worldwide requested permission to visit and study this unique relationship. Documentary filmmakers proposed new projects, and scientific journals expressed interest in articles about the case. Maker Haven became not just a model for ethical management and responsible conservation, but also a center for research on human-wildlife interactions. Each new discovery about Rex's behavior and his bond with Michael contributed to a deeper and more respectful understanding of animal intelligence and sensitivity. One quiet afternoon, about a year after the sanctuary's transformation, Michael received an unexpected visitor while working in his office, Richard Parker. The former director looked different, thinner with a tired expression, yet strangely more at peace than during his days of frantic management. After serving several months of house arrest, he had been sentenced to community service and financial restitution for the embezzled funds. "May I come in?" he asked, standing at the door. Michael nodded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. An uncomfortable silence lingered between them for a few seconds. "You've done good work here," Richard finally remarked, glancing out the window at the bustling sanctuary. "Better than I ever did." "We have a dedicated team," Michael replied neutrally. "Including my daughter," Richard noted, pride and regret mingling in his voice. "She always had the right instincts for this. I just never knew how to appreciate it." Michael waited, sensing there was more to this visit than just observations. "I came to offer a contribution," the former director continued, placing an envelope on the desk. "It's part of the money I received from selling some assets. It doesn't come close to covering what I took, but it's a start." Michael studied the envelope, surprised by the gesture. "Why now?" Richard let out a deep sigh. "I've spent a lot of time reflecting about my choices, about what really matters. I watched the documentaries about the sanctuary, about you, and that lion. I saw the work my daughter has been doing." He paused, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I realized I spent years building something I thought was important: status, money, influence. But in the end, what you've built here based on genuine respect and care, that's something that will last." Michael never expected to see genuine remorse in Richard Parker. The transformation was as surprising as it was welcome. "We accept your contribution," he finally decided. "It'll be used directly for the animals' care." "That's all I ask," Richard replied, standing up. "And Michael, thank you for taking care of Rex better than I ever could. He always deserved more than I was willing to give." After Richard Parker left, Michael Thompson went to find Emily Parker to tell her about the visit. He found her in the educational office, developing new materials with Mrs. Dorothy. "Your father was here," he informed her, watching her reaction closely. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "My father? What did he want?" When Michael explained the donation and Richard Parker's words, Emily fell silent for a long moment, processing the information. "He really said that? About my work?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. "Yes. He seemed sincere," Michael confirmed. "People can change, Emily, even the ones we least expect." That evening, after work, Emily visited her father's apartment, for the first time in over a year. The reconciliation wouldn't be easy or quick, but a first step had been taken, a step as significant as it was unexpected. In the following weeks, Richard Parker began contributing to the sanctuary in ways beyond financial support. His administrative knowledge and network of contacts, now applied ethically, proved valuable in opening doors and establishing partnerships. Working as a volunteer consultant, always under strict supervision, he found a way to repair some of the damage he had caused. Richard Parker's presence initially caused tension among the staff, especially those who had suffered under his previous management, but gradually, his genuine effort to contribute positively began to be recognized. He was no longer the authoritarian director, but a man seeking redemption through service. On a sunny spring afternoon, nearly 2 years after Rex's rescue from the Cliff, McCaw Haven celebrated the opening of a new area, the Eleanor Wright Recovery Center, dedicated to animals with special rehabilitation needs. The event brought together officials, the press, partners, and of course the entire sanctuary team, including volunteers from the Natural Wisdom Program, now with over 30 active seniors. Eleanor, moved to tears, cut the ribbon with slightly trembling hands. "This center represents everything I dreamed of during my career," the veteran declared to the gathered crowd. "A place where science, compassion, and respect come together to give a second chance to animals others might consider lost." After the formal ceremony, as guests toured the new facilities, Michael found a moment alone with Rex in his renovated enclosure. The lion, now nearly 20 years old, an advanced age for his species, moved more slowly but maintained his lively gaze and deep connection with his caretaker. "Look what you started, big guy," Michael remarked, sitting beside the majestic animal. "All of this because you decided to venture onto that cliff," Rex purred softly, resting his head on Michael's lap as he had done for so many years since he was a cub. "You know, sometimes I think you knew exactly what you were doing," Michael continued thoughtfully, "as if you had planned it all to change things around here." The lion lifted his head, fixing those piercing amber eyes on Michael as if he truly understood every word. In the distance, Eleanor watched the scene with a serene smile. Beside her, Emily and Sarah also marveled at the extraordinary bond that had transformed not just a sanctuary, but the lives of everyone around it. "Do you think he really understands?" Emily asked quietly. "More than we can imagine," Eleanor replied with the wisdom of decades working with animals. "The connection between species is one of nature's greatest mysteries and wonders." We're just beginning to understand its depths." Sarah smiled, now observing not just Michael and Rex, but the entire sanctuary around them, a place transformed by the power of an authentic bond and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the path seems impossible. "All this because of one risky rescue," she remarked. "And a very special lion," added Emily. "And people who cared enough to act," Mrs. Eleanor Wright finished, her eyes shining with the wisdom of someone who's seen enough of life to recognize truly transformative moments. In the enclosure, as if sensing he was being watched, Rex lifted, his head majestically, his golden mane glowing in the afternoon sun. For a moment, his eyes met those of the distant observers, as if acknowledging their role in this extraordinary story. Michael smiled, stroking the mane of the animal who had become a symbol of something far greater than any of them. A reminder that the deepest connections arise in the most unexpected moments, and that true loyalty transcends words, species, and even time. Macaw Haven would continue to grow and inspire, a living testament to how one act of courage can spark transformations no one could foresee. And at the heart of this remarkable story, a man and a lion prove daily that some bonds simply defy conventional explanation. They are in their purest essence manifestations of something profoundly ancient and sacred, the connection between living beings who choose to trust one another against all odds. The end of the story. If you were moved by this incredible journey of Michael and Rex, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments what touched your heart most in this tale of loyalty that transcends species. Your opinion means the world to us.